Chapter 5, Another View. Sheba started to follow her parents into the trees when she suddenly smelled something strong. Her father and mother smelled it too. It was the scent of hunters. Her father's head was swaying back and forth, trying to find out which direction the scent was coming from. He looked back. Run! Without hesitation, Sheba ran as fast as her large, strong legs could go. She knew what to do. Her father had taught her well. He had told her to run as fast as she could, and as far as she could, to circle and backtrack, confuse the hunters, and meet back in a hidden spot further down the river. Suddenly, she heard a sound that sent cold shivers down her spine. She had heard that sound before. It was the sound of an arrow shooting from a bow. She will never forget that vibration. The beasts had shot at her parents. The fear raced through her body like a river rushing down the mountain. She was running so fast over her heavy breathing, wind, and breaking foliage, she couldn't hear if the arrow had hit anything. A legend of El Capella, Kepla, El Capella 22. She reached out in her thoughts. She called to El Capella that he would keep her parents safe. She did what she was taught several times before she was too tired to run anymore. She collapsed on the ground next to a large tree, panting heavily, blinking the tears from her eyes. She caught a whiff of its scent again. But this time it was different. It wasn't as strong, yet she could hear the hunter was closer. She looked up just in time to see a hunter step out of the trees and freeze in front of her. This beast was different from the ones she had only caught glances of before. This one was smaller, a lot smaller. It had the look of fear in his eyes. He was looking right at Sheba, as if it feared her. The beast was scared of her. Memories of lessons ignored came flooding back to her. El Capella's teachings of man. She sensed a change in the air, and she seen the look in his eyes had also changed. Neither of them was scared. Neither wanted to run. She could see part of maybe he remembered teachings as well. Sheba couldn't quite tell what, but something of the man resembled El Capella's form. Sheba and the small hunter stared at each other for a long time, studying, learning all they could learn with their eyes and nose. Sheba was surprised that she didn't feel afraid of this hunter anymore. Instead, she felt safe, a strange calm that she would always be protected by him. This was very strange. The man smiled at Sheba and quickly placed his arrow and knife away. He chatted something softly to her, but it was sound combinations that she couldn't understand. Sheba scratched the ground and nodded her head, trying to let him know that she knew he was trying. The man's eyes narrowed, with lines appearing on the sides, showing he smiled at her. But strangely, his mouth went wide, showing some of his teeth. 23 J.B. Mountier. Suddenly he waved his hands and stomped his foot. He chattered more strange sound at her and slapped the side of his head and laughed. She knew that he had just thought of something, and by the way he was acting, it was something he should have thought of right away. She laughed a little in her head. He pulled out a colorful, carved dead tree branch. It looked like it had been hollowed out and holes carefully bored along the sides and top. It's something beautiful, like Sheba had never seen before. She had never seen anything that was made by the beasts, by man. But it stunk. The branch itself did not smell too bad. It smelled mostly of wood, bone, and even shiny metals of the earth. The strap smelled much like the rest of his distasteful dead skin covers. They wear over their own skin. Beasts, indeed. The young man raised the dead branch to his mouth and started to exhale into it. The sound that came out surprised Sheba. Some of the sounds matched a mother crying her lost child. Another sounded like a child searching for their parents. Sheba raised and shook her head and stared harder into the hunter's trying eyes. She wanted to know more of this different man's spirit. She wondered why he would tell her of a mother and child in pain. The small hunter smiled, then made the sound of the sad child again and pointed to her. Sheba knew that the hunter was trying to communicate with her. Sheba smiled at the hunter. She tried to say hello to him. She probably sounded like snorting. With her luck, she smiled her elk smile. The hunter laughed as if he was proud of himself for making a baby noise. He stepped slowly closer to Sheba and held out his hand. Sheba knew that he was trying not to frighten her, so she slowly stepped closer to him. The man smiled at her again and blew on his stick. Again, it sounded like a mother calling to her child. Sheba didn't know that the hunters could make such sounds, especially sounds of children playing as well. "Hello, friend," he said, stepping closer. He looked like a legend of El Capella 24. He wanted to jump up and down with delight. She recognized the clues because she was showing them herself. He slowly reached up and placed his small hand on Sheba's neck and rubbed her softly. Sheba smiled at the small hunter and nudged him with her nose. The hunter laughed and patted her neck. "Friend," he said softly. Sheba didn't understand what he was saying, but it sounded friendly to her. The different man slowly caressed Sheba's warm cheek and smiled. He once more played the child sound and pointed to Sheba. But this time when he played the mother song of sadness, he pointed in the direction that Sheba thought her family went and where they were to meet. Does he want to help? She thought. Suddenly, Sheba's nose caught a scent riding on the air that made her hair stand on end. "Oh no!" she shouted. "Another hunter is coming!" She quickly jumped to her shaking feet, looked at the small hunter, and ran. He watched her run, looking confused on what had just happened. Sheba had never been so frightened in her life. Her father or mother had always been around in times of danger. She could always see, smell, or hear someone she knew nearby. Now she didn't know if they were even alive. She continued to run through the trees as fast as she could, backtracking and circling again like her father had taught her. She ran until she could no longer stand. When her legs would not listen, she had stopped in a place with thick grass to lay on. She could hardly catch her breath. She had run so far, so fast. She looked around nervously. She didn't recognize this part of the forest. She had never been here before. Her fear and heart jumped. Her skin swept with cold chills from her nose to her tail. It was darker here and she was lost. Suddenly she caught a shadow out of the corner of her eye. Now she was really scared. She slowly turned her head in case the shadow hadn't seen her yet. Sheba's big brown eyes got even bigger. She could not believe what she was seeing. She didn't know if it was real. Standing in front of Sheba was the dark figure of El Capella. When he moved, his form seemed to shimmer with Furian smoke, with no smell. 25 JB Mountier, El Capella, lifted his arm and extended it towards Sheba. "Don't be frightened, Sheba," his voice like the breeze blowing through a tunnel of trees. "I am here to help you." Sheba was astonished that El Capella knew her name, that he was really there, and he knew her name. She knew she looked nervous. She slowly stood on her shaking legs. She had dreamed of this moment all her life. Hi," she stammered. El Capella moved closer until he was face to face with Sheba. He moved like a leaf drifting in a slow breeze. "What is it you wish, Sheba?" he said quietly. Sheba felt the fear and rage grow deep inside her. As she thought back to what happened to her family in the meadow, she thought of the hunters running after them, and she thought of the different man. "I don't know what to do, great El Capella," she pleaded. "I don't even know where my parents are," she cried. She could feel her rage growing. "Hunters came into the forest, and for no reason, shot at my father." El Capella could not give her the counsel she needed. But he had other ways. First, he gifted her to ease her heart, a calmness she desperately needed for his next gift. El Capella, knowing she would not hear most, he explained to her that the hunters needed the animals for food, just like the elk needed the grass. He also told her that if the hunters didn't take some of the animals, the herds would grow too large, and that some would eat it all, and in the long winter, everything will be eaten too quickly. Many more of her friends would die, many more than the hunters now take. He reminded her of the stories she had been taught of how the man and the other creatures had changed when given knowledge. Sheba looked confused and angry. "If only I could hunt the hunter," she said angrily. "Oh, you'll do better than that," El Capella whispered, placing a ghostly hand on Sheba's shaking shoulder. She felt heat from his hand. A legend of El Capella 26 hoof, and it immediately rushed through her body. Her hair stood up all over her long, tall body. She was swiftly emerged in a brilliant white light. Sheba held her eyes tightly closed as the heat and light grew. Her body grew hot and she tingled all over, like she was being stabbed by thousands of tiny thorns. 27 JB Mountier Chapter 6, A New Arrival. When the hunting party returned to the village, Eagle Heart talked to his grandfather about his experience with the elk. He went to help and watch as his father and the other hunters worked on the animals they had brought back, while his grandfather played his flute by the crops to help them grow. Elk grandson has taught his son how to harvest and skin all the animals. He was learning which parts to use now, what to dry for later, and how to use the smallest part. Nothing is wasted. His father taught him how to work the stomach from the animals to make bags to hold water. Eagle Heart worked by his father nervously, his mind racing, running over and over his unique run-in with the elk. His father was grunting with more frustration than usual. Eagle Heart knew his father was angry that he was one of the hunters that did not harvest a large animal. He felt like less of a man. He had not done his part for his people nor his son. He felt less of a father. A legend of Elka 28. Father, Eagle Heart asked quietly, not wanting to upset him more. I am happy that we use all the parts. Elk grandson stopped scraping the fat from the hide and looked up to his son. Yes, my son, he said, patting Eagle Heart's head. We do not want to waste anything. We use all that we can. He held up a stringy piece. Even the sinew to make tough string and more. He smiled. What do you think your bow string is made of? Eagle Heart looked up when he saw his grandfather walk quickly by. He was staring towards the tree line at the edge of the village. Eagle Heart stood up to see where he was looking. Excuse me, father, he said, standing up. Can I go and talk to grandfather? Elk grandson, his head filled with his own thoughts and busy working. He was not paying attention. Yes, whatever you need to do. He waved him off. The Coca and Eagle Heart walked through the village. The Coca pointing out little things, differences, and people. No one sees the same things in the same ways, the Coca explained. The fish does not see the same world as the groundhog, and he does not see the same world as the eagle. You need to try your best to always think from the other's perceptions and memories. Eagle Heart shook his head. I wish my father could forget this year's hunt. Your father will remember not getting an elk this year for a long time. Your memories are what shape your life. They shape you into who you are. He will be a better man for it. The Coca put his hand on his young pupil's shoulder. See that big man sitting over there? He gestured. One with lighter skin and thick face hair. Eagle Heart looked over to see the hairy man sitting quietly under a willow tree. He was staring into the river, but his look was miles away. Yes, Coca, I know of him, he smiled. That's the storyteller, Bear Claw. Everyone knows him. He snorted. It's great to sit at his night fire. He looked up towards the stars. He tells amazing stories. He looked back at the man. 29, J.B. Mountier. What was his name when he first came here, Coca? He couldn't remember, he said sadly. We called him Bear Claw because of his large hands and a scar across his neck that looks like that of a bear claw. He looked sadly at the large man. Something happened to him that took everything from him, including his memories. His thick eyebrows furrowed. And in return for those stolen memories, it gave him a gift of stories to share with us. Eagle Heart's smile dimmed. Does he know where he came from? No, my boy. He paused, taking in a deep breath. Sometimes his nightmares remember. They remember things that make him cry it out, pleading to someone to not give up. He turned to face his young pupil. Sometimes we should be thankful for things we cannot remember. The Coca took in a slow, deep breath. Sometimes life gives us something that we do not expect. He stopped. Like this. He pointed to the forest tree line where there stood a frightened-looking young lady. Who is she? Eagle Heart asked. She looks scared, Grandpa. The Coca nodded and took a puff of his pipe and blew out a skiff of smoke. They both watched it closely as the special smoke swirled into a shape. The rolling smoke pointed toward her. She is someone very special, he said, placing his hand on Eagle Heart's head. And she has been sent here. She was sent for a very special reason. He smiled. The woman was looking at the village like she hadn't seen anything like it before. She just stood there, frozen like a frightened deer. Wait her, the Coca said softly. I must help her. She had long, straight hair that waved slightly in the breeze. Eagle Heart noticed it was lighter in color than the hair of his people. He had only seen that a few times. She was wearing strange clothes, a legend of El Capella 30, that looked like they were made completely of elk hide. He watched his grandfather as he carefully approached the woman. He could not help but laugh a little. His grandfather, the great Koka, looked like he was approaching a scared animal in a trap. The Koka stopped a few feet in front of her and began talking. Eagleheart tried to stretch out his hearing, but it was no use. There was no way he could hear what they were saying. Before long, the Koka and the woman walked hand in hand back to where Eagleheart was waiting. "This is Sheba," he introduced her. "She has come a long way to learn our ways." He unusually placed her hand into Eagleheart's. "This is my grandson, Eagleheart." He was smiling ear to ear. Eagleheart was astonished. He knew that he had met her before. He was sure of it. Her eyes were the biggest and the most beautiful color of brown he had ever seen. He knew that he knew those brilliant eyes. He could never forget those eyes. Her eyelashes were amazingly long, and her skin was so fair and soft, he didn't want to let go of her hand. It reminded him of moms holding their children's hands around the village. He had not had that special bond, at least as far as he could remember. And Sheba did not seem to be bothered by holding his hand either. "Hello, Eagleheart," she smiled in a soft, soothing voice. "That is a beautiful name." She knelt to look him straight in the eyes. "It is a name that fits you well," she smiled warmly. "I can see that your heart can love as far as the eagle can see." She reached up and touched his soft cheek. "It is a pleasure to see you again, friend." Eagleheart's legs started to shake. He knew who she was and where he had met her before. Before he had a chance to say anything, his grandfather seen the look in his eyes. "Eagleheart," he said quietly, "we have a secret to keep, don't we?" He placed his fist on his grandson's shoulder and winked. J.B. Mountier. Eagleheart's mind was racing. He not only could not believe what he was seeing, he wasn't sure it was really happening. He was scared, baffled, and excited all at once. "Yes, grandfather," he gulped. Yes, I guess we do." The Koka turned to see many of his people that had seen the new arrival and were walking over. The Koka went to them, leaving Eagleheart alone with Sheba. "So how, why, what is going on?" He stammered, trying to ask her all his questions at once. Sheba placed her new hand on Eagleheart's shoulder. "I'm not sure, my young friend," she said quietly, "but El Capella must have a reason." She hesitated for a moment, not wanting to sound threatening. "Where is the big hunter you were with today?" she asked. "Who is he?" "El Capella." His excitement grew. Eagleheart looked towards the men who were attending to the harvested animals. "He is over there." He pointed his dirty little finger at the group of men. "He is helping the other hunters cut meat." Sheba quickly turned away from it with horror. Desperately trying not to throw up, she needed to find the hunter to know what happened to her father. She took in several deep breaths, concentrating, trying to calm her anger. She was sure El Capella had more of a reason to send her here. She had to endure it. The people were gathering around them. "My friends," the Koka raised his voice to be heard. "This is Sheba, and she traveled far to see us." He placed his hand on her shoulder. "She doesn't know how she got here. We must care for her until she can find her way." He looked at her knowingly. "Maybe it will help her remember if we teach her our ways, teach and care for her as one of our own." Sheba looked at every man's face that she could see, but the curious women gathered quickly around her. A legend of El Capella. El Capella, El Capella 32. Elk grandson kept back, watching from afar. Although, like the other men, he was very interested in her. He had never seen such a woman before. He could swear she even had a glow around her. He realized that she had started to stir feelings in him that he hadn't felt since the loss of his wife. Feelings he thought he could never feel again. He shook his head. He should not be thinking this way. Even though he did not harvest any big game, there was still much work to be done. He pulled his eyes reluctantly from Sheba and went back to work. The crowd dissipated as the women led Sheba to where they were working. They passed people weaving baskets, mending clothes, some doing beadwork, and another carving a flute. Sheba was amazed they could do such wonderful things with these hands and these fingers. She looked at her new fingers. So many things she could never do with her hooves. Her revenge all but forgotten, Sheba sat within the women for hours, learning everything anyone would be willing to teach her. A woman who had befriended Sheba took her by the hand. "Come on," she said excitedly. "It is time to gather around the after fire." She pulled Sheba to her feet. "You have got to see this." she said, dancing a little. This is a most important ceremony. Sheba was dragged to a gathering of people around a giant fire. When she got to a place she could see through the crowd, she found she was standing next to a very shiny and a very large rock. She couldn't help sliding her hand along its smooth surface. It was of a shape she had never seen. Sheba was very frightened being so close to the fire, with so many dancing and bumping into her. Sheba looked at her, feeling confused. "What is that dancing?" she asked. Now it was Chanta's turn to look confused. "You mean your people never dance?" she asked, waving her arms in the air and twisting her shoulders back and forth. 33B Mountier. Sheba watched her new friend's movements and was more confused. "Maybe our word for dance is different," she said, hoping to get a better answer than flaring arms. The music and mood changed. A line appeared as the hunters moved strangely around the council fire. They were jumping, swinging their arms, and shouting strange sounds and blowing on their flutes. She watched as the light from the blazing fire flickered on their painted bodies, making them look as if they were moving in slow motion. The people who were sitting in a circle around the fire were also shouting strange sounds, and when the fire flickered across them, their faces were full of joy and excitement. The fire let out a roar as it blasted higher into the darkening sky. The smoke split and separated in front of her, and she could see the Coca was sitting on the shimmering, smooth boulder that was now across from her. His legs were folded under, making his eyes look solid white. His wrinkled lip were moving in a silent murmur. Suddenly, his eyes dropped. He was looking right at Sheba. Sheba could feel his eyes burning into her, as if he was seeing right through her. She was frightened by feeling, and the look on the Coca's face, he lowered his arms toward the smoke, never taking his eyes from Sheba. His feist started circling around and around. He took in a deep breath and blew out sharply. The dark smoke twirled into a tunnel of smoke that shot out straight at the terrified Sheba. The dense smoke burned Sheba's eyes. She quickly tightened them and couldn't help but gasp. To her surprise, the smoke didn't choke her as she inhaled. The smoke seemed not to head to her lungs, but to her heart, mind, and eyes in a warm, embracing numbness. It was not smoke. Sheba started to feel hot from the tips of her toes to the ends of her hair. A legend of El Capella. El Capella, 34. New feelings started to stir deep inside her, and she slowly opened her eyes. It was like she was looking through someone else's eyes. She could see things she couldn't before. Seeing through man eyes was different enough, but this wasn't the same kind of sight. The smoke from the fire was full of animals, from her cousin, the great moose, all the way down to small fish that swam through the smoke water. That's what the people had been looking at. Sheba looked at the hunters. They weren't just jumping crazily around the fire, and they were dancing beautifully to show respect and courage to their forest brothers. Sheba could also hear things she couldn't before. The people weren't just shouting strange sounds. They were singing songs of their great thankfulness to the animals who gave their lives to preserve their own. Sheba watched the young boys who went with their fathers on the hunt as they joined in. She saw her young friend Eagleheart. She could feel his love and gratitude flow from him into the surrounding energies as he danced joyfully around the blazing fire. Sheba looked around at the women who were gathered around her. Their arms and legs were folded, and their heads were bowed. She could feel what was coming from their hearts and minds as well. They were praying to a higher power, a power that sent them El Capella. Suddenly, through all the feelings of good, she felt a strong feeling of torment. Sheba stood and wondered where these mixed emotions were coming from. At the edge of the gathered people, the firelight flickered, and Sheba saw a hunter sitting in the shadows alone. The hunter's legs were folded like the others, but his face was lowered into his hands. She stepped closer and searched through his feelings. His feelings and his heart and mind did not match. His mind was filled with anger, hatefulness, and revenge, but his heart filled with loss, loneliness, and more love and compassion than Sheba had ever felt before. As Sheba searched his heart, she couldn't help but to be drawn into it. Suddenly, the hunter looked up, and when their eyes meet, Sheba felt their hearts intertwine as one. 35. Jay Mountier. His eyes went wide with surprise. He quickly jumped to his feet. Sheba, he mumbled shyly. I didn't see you there. You know my name? She blushed. Yes, replied the hunter nervously. You are different from the women in our village. Sheba smiled warmly. More than you know, she giggled. He looked down at his feet and shuffled like a nervous boy, then quickly lifted his head and tried to look strong and brave. I would like to know you, he stuttered and had a look of longing in his eyes. Sheba felt her cheeks get hot as they blushed for the first time. I am honored to finally meet you, Sheba. I'm Elk Grandson. Sheba's big brown eyes grew even bigger. That is the best name I have heard here. She almost shouted. How did you get such a great name? Elk Grandson looked at the people that surrounded the fire. I don't know, he said with a hint of anger in his voice. My father has told me many times why, but he leaves something out. He was frustrated. The important part to my name song is missing. He looked down at his feet again. When I was young, I liked my name, he said bitterly. But now it's different. Sheba felt his heart and mind start to struggle again. She reached out and lifted his strong chin and looked into the depths of his eyes. Elk Grandson is the most honorable name anyone could have, she said softly. Trust me. Her smile melting his iced-up feelings. He smiled, and she could feel the love and compassion start to grow, starting to refile his heart again. She saw it in his eyes, and when he blushed, she knew that he saw it reflected in her own big eyes. Sheba and Elk Grandson spent the next few days hardly ever apart. The smiling Coca hidden from sight, but never too far away. His A Legend of El Capella. Elk 36 lessons with Eagle Heart kept most his time, and Elk Grandson took most of hers. Elk Grandson missed much time with his son. When he had time to see his son, she was learning a new craft or some other woman thing. Strangely, in those short days, he never had the chance to introduce Sheba to his son. It seemed like whenever Eagle Heart was around, Sheba was off with the women of the village, and when Sheba was by him, Eagle Heart was always in Coca lessons, and when he wasn't, he was spending time with a new friend. Every day, their hearts grew closer as they talked and shared time together. In those joyful days, Sheba still couldn't figure out why Elk Grandson struggled so much between his heart and mind. His mind was angry with something that his heart couldn't truly believe. While walking by the strange great rock, Sheba took Elk Grandson's hand in her own and looked him straight in the eyes. What is this anger you hold locked in your thoughts? She asked softly, not wanting to say the rest. Does it have something to do with the loss of your wife? Sheba cringed inside at her own words. She cringed as she waited for an answer. Elk Grandson looked over at the engraving of El Capella. Sheba could feel his anger rise. She expected him to drop her hand, but instead he squeezed it tighter. Sheba looked over at the carving he was staring at. Does it have something to do with El Capella? She asked. He took hold of her hand. Do your people believe in El Capella? He asked. Sheba wanted to wipe away the tear that fell from his eye, but she knew how proud he was. Sheba knew it would make him feel less of a man. Yes, we believe in him very much, she said. He is the one who led me here. Elk Grandson sat down and gently pulled Sheba down next to him. He tried to speak several times, but couldn't seem to get it out. She could feel that he was fighting the turmoil inside himself. What is it? She asked, placing her hand on his cheek. You can tell me anything. He tried to smile, stood up, and paced in front of her. When I was young, my father taught me the ways of El Capella, he said bitterly. And I believe him. I swear I thought I could even see him sometimes. He kicked a rock on the ground and shook his head. He taught me that the animals of the forest were our brothers, he continued. I even taught his ways to my own son. He slammed his fist against his chest. I was to become a Coca, he cried. But I was wrong. But it's not wrong, Sheba said, standing up desperately, wanting him to believe her words. The animals live in circle and balance with your people. She wanted to say more, but didn't want to anger him further. He felt on the verge of something. He stopped pacing and looked at her. I was wrong, he said angrily, and I'll tell you why. He folded his arms and lowered his head. I'm sorry for shouting, he said calmly. A few years ago, when I was hunting with the others, the women were out gathering, including my wife. He shook his head and wiped a tear from his eye. My wife and son were gathering berries by the river. Eagleheart was very small back then. He was playing while my wife gathered deeper into the thick brush. Elk Grandson paused and took in a slow, deep breath. When we came back, the women were frantic and one was holding my son. They quickly led us to where I learned how wrong I was. He looked up at Sheba and took in another deep breath. My wife was lying on the ground. She had been mauled by a bear, over berries. A Legend of El Capella. El Capella 38, Chapter 7. Final Understanding. Sheba's heart sank. She knew how much Elk Grandson loved his wife, and now Sheba loved him too. She couldn't stand to see him this way, but at least now she finally understood. She threw her arms around him and started to cry with him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wish that I could fix the hole in your heart." Elk Grandson hugged her back and stroked her long, soft hair. "You have already started too," he whispered. Suddenly, something that Sheba's mom had told her leaped into her memory. She quickly pulled back but kept her arms around him. "I remember," she said. He looked very confused. "What do you mean?" he asked, wiping a tear from his cheek. 39 JB Mountier. "I remember the bear attack," she said. Some memories came fluting in, things that her mom had told her. Elk Grandson looked at her more confused. Sheba pulled herself out of his arms and started to pace. "I remember my mother telling me about her friend," she said, pausing as she tried to think of a way to tell him what she knew and not who she was. "My mother told me of a bear and her small cub that once lived not far from here." She looked sad as she continued. "My mother said they were eating berries, and the mother went to see if the river was low enough to catch fish. When the mother returned, she could not find her cub, but she could smell the scent of a hunter. She was very frightened. I can only imagine how frightened she was. Frightening to a bear?" He shook his head, looking as if she'd gone crazy. "How could they know what the bear smelled or how she felt?" he asked bitterly. "They are uncaring beasts." Sheba hesitated, trying not to take offense. "This is just what my mother told me." The mother bear looked frantically for her cub, calling out for him and getting more freighted. With every frantic pounce, the hunter's scent grew stronger. The brushes next to her opened, and with her mother's instincts kicked in before she could think, she attacked. When she looked down, and what she saw filled her heart with sorrow. It wasn't a hunter she smelled. It was a female with a basket of food. Her cub had been safe. She didn't know. Sheba looked over at Elk Grandson. He was shaking his head and pacing again. "How could this be true?" he shouted. "How could your people know this for sure?" He stopped pacing and put his hands on his cringing face. "Did I really lose her because of a mistake?" Sheba embraced him, and he squeezed her tightly with his strong arms. "The story I told you is the truth," Sheba whispered softly. "I am truly sorry." Elk Grandson held her tighter. "I trust you, Sheba," he whispered back. "I don't know how, but I believe you." He shook his head, stunned by the absurdness of it. How could she possibly know? He looked into her big brown eyes and melted. "If you say something is true, I will always believe you." He let go of her hand, reached down, picked a flower, and placed it in her hair. A Legend of El Capella. El Capella. El Capella 40. I both turned when they heard shouting. "Sheba! Sheba!" called the small voice. Eagleheart was running towards them. Sheba let go of Elk Grandson, just as Eagleheart threw his arms around her. "Where have you been?" he asked. "We were supposed to go for a walk, remember?" "Sorry," Sheba said, ruffling his hair. "I forgot." Elk Grandson looked at them both and smiled. "You know Eagleheart?" he said excitedly. "Of course I do," she smiled. "He is my good friend. Almost every day he has found me between his own lessons. He comes and gets me when I am with the women and drags me off to play." Elk Grandson smiled with pleasure. The woman he loves also cares for his son. Eagleheart looked up. "I see you've met my father," he said excitedly. "He is the hunter that I was with that day." He smiled wider. "My father." Sheba looked from Eagleheart to Elk Grandson and back. "Wait," she raised her hand. "Elk Grandson? Your father was the hunter." She gasped. "Sure is." Eagleheart shouted proudly. Now Sheba was filled with turmoil. Eagleheart's father is the one who took away her parents. Sheba put her hands to her face as she started to cry. She understood these people's ways and how they live in circle and balance with the animals, but how could she be with the man who took away her parents? She pulled the flower from her hair and let it drop to the ground. I'm sorry. She cried and ran into the forest. Elk Grandson watched in disbelief as Sheba disappeared into the trees. He quickly turned to his boy. Tell me, son, he said as calmly as he could, but could not hide his eagerness. What did you tell her? His grip tightened. Why, when she found out I was your father, did she get so upset? Eagle Heart searched his mind. He knew he couldn't tell his father who or what Sheba truly was. He had promised his grandfather. He was taught to never break a promise and to never lie. When she first came 41 J.B. Mountier to our village, he said, trying to remember everything he could and not lie to his father. She knew I had been out hunting that day, and she asked me who I was with. He looked up. I just told her I was with you, my father. Elk Grandson thought for a moment and squeezed his son's shoulders. Is that why she left? He asked desperately. Did you tell her that I didn't harvest an animal for our people? Does she think me less of a man? He made a point to not talk about that day, that bad hunt with her. He did not want the first hunt day she met him on to be one which he failed. Eagle Heart shook his head. No, father, she doesn't know that, he said. She didn't even ask what my father's name was. He searched his mind for anything that might help. Every time we were together, we would have a good time. I never mentioned the hunt or hunting, and I never thought to tell her your name. He winked. Your father to me. Elk Grandson stood up and searched his own memory. He had always talked to Sheba about his son, but he couldn't remember ever saying Eagle Heart's name. Why would she get so upset when he told her that his name was Elk Grandson? She said it was the best name she had ever heard, and Sheba seemed to care a great deal for Eagle Heart. He knew that Sheba loved him, so why? Eagle Heart, he said in quiet desperation. I have got to find her, my son. I know, father, I can see the love you have for her in your eyes. He gave his father a hug and squeezed him tightly. It is nice to see it there again. I will bring her back, he said, ruffling his son's hair. As soon as I find her, he winked. Sheba ran deep into the forest, half blinded by the tears in her eyes. She ran until she bumped into someone. Are you okay, my dear? Asked a familiar voice. A legend of El Capella 42. She looked up to the blurred, ghostly figure. It looked solid but seemed too wavier in the breeze. She wiped the tears from her eyes. It was the man Coca. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't see you there. I was running. I couldn't. It's okay, young one. He comforted her. I know what you are feeling, and I think I can lighten your burden. He looked into her eyes. You just need to trust me. Sheba looked up into the old man's knowing eyes. What do you mean? She sniffled. Elk Grandson did not harvest an animal on the hunt this year, he said, placing his clenched fist on her shaking shoulder. Your parents are alive and doing quite well. What? She threw her arms around the Coca. Her eyes filled with tears, as her heart filled with joy. They are waiting for you in the meadow just through the trees, he pointed. El Capella is with them. Oh, thank you, she cried, hugging him again. As an elk so could never hug like that before, it felt nice. Thank you so much. She let go and bolted through the trees. Sheba ran through the thicket, her heart beating so rapidly it felt like it was going to burst out of her. She suddenly erupted out of the trees. She saw her parents standing in the clearing with the dark figure of El Capella. Mother, father, she cried. She ran to them and threw her arms around their large necks. Oh, I missed you so much, she sobbed. I thought I would never see you again. They know everything that has been happening to you, El Capella said in a wind, deep voice. They have even been watching you. El Capella placed his ghostly dark hand on Sheba's shoulder. 43. J.B. Mountier. She immediately felt the heat rush through her body as it did before. The heat grew, and she tingled all over, but she didn't change back into an elk. What's wrong? She said in wonder. Why am I not changing? El Capella seemed to smile. Your feelings in your heart and mind do not match, El Capella said softly. They are filled with torment. Your energies do not know where to move. He shimmered like he was smiling. You want to stick around for a while, I think. He laughed. Sheba looked back in the direction of the man village, then back to El Capella. What do I do? She asked as a tear fell from her cheek. I don't understand, she sobbed. Go and talk with your parents, granddaughter, whispered El Capella. They will help you. Sheba turned and started to walk with her parents when she realized what El Capella had just said. Granddaughter, she exclaimed quickly, look flashing between the legendary figure and at her father. It was you. You were there? She shouted. You were the young bull elk in the legend? Her father nodded. His large antlers broke a branch off a tree. She looked over at the great El Capella. And you, she stammered.